All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm very excited that you are here today. My name is Billy Dees, and this is the Billy Dees Podcast. If you are new to the program, we are primarily an interview and a commentary podcast. You can find the Billy Dees Podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are found, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, and just about any of them for the most part. There might be a few that we've missed, but you can find us on just about all of those platforms. We have been around a long time. Our history with Apple Podcast and Spotify goes back years. We are not a Johnny come lately to the podcasting medium. We've been here a long while. Now we are new to YouTube and Facebook. And recently, some of these podcasts we've been sending to LinkedIn as well. Some of these podcasts are more, I would say, related to the business world than others. So not all of them, but we have been going on LinkedIn as well. And viewership on those, like I said, we're brand new to YouTube. We have been on Facebook here recently, so we're starting to get some traction there. So the video aspect of this and the live aspect of this is somewhat new, although we've done live podcasts before, but anyway, you can find us all of those places, and it's always a pleasure to have you. What we are going to talk about today always gets me in trouble. This is a commentary podcast today, and that's one of the things that we've been told in our research that does good for us. A lot of times, the commentary podcasts do very well. And today we're going to talk about skepticism, and it's something that I've talked about before, and it always gets me in trouble. Somebody always is mad that I'm promoting negativity and all these other things. But the fact of the matter is that a healthy dose of skepticism does a body good. That's what we're going to talk about today. Yes, there is a knee-jerk reaction to the word skepticism. I believe people feel that automatically it's going to mean that you are going to refute their personal beliefs. You're going to say that whatever they believe in is not true. And it invariably, I get these straw man arguments when I talk about positivity sometimes being bottled and sold very much like faith is. And people will say, oh, so you like negativity. You're anti-positive. That's not true. Those straw man arguments, I get them all the time, and that is not what this is about. Skepticism to me, and yes, it does mean doubting, I guess, in the strictest sense when people use it in common speak, but it's really about being able to separate what is a personal truth and an objective truth. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. There's nothing wrong with having a good attitude. As a matter of fact, it's a requirement. Okay. In all the things that I do, if you and I are going to work together, you're going to be a member of my team. You have to have a positive attitude. Okay. That's an approach to things. You know, nobody wants to work with somebody who says, oh, everything's a bummer. You know, we have to do this. Why do we have to do this? I don't understand why we have to do this. This is a bummer. Nobody wants to work with that. We need to instill confidence in one another. There's absolutely, it's so good to get a pat on the back, especially when you don't expect it. And from someone you may not expect it coming from. That's the best feeling in the world. And no one is impugning that. I want to make that very clear as you listen to us today. And with me, a good attitude comes respect. You know, you should always respect the people that you're talking to, that you're living with. All of these things, respect is very important. And here again, this is all positive. All right. And I happen to believe that even criticism should be fashioned in a way that it is supportive. It should never be used to tear someone down. That's not that's not what we're talking about here. When we talk about being skeptical and not being, I'll say, almost addicted to positivity. That's something that I do notice a lot on LinkedIn. I mean, everything is don't listen to the naysayers, don't go move forward at all cost. And that's fine in the proper measure when you realize that it's part of empowering yourself. It's not a matter of denying reality or denying the obstacles that are going to come your way. No one is questioning. I want to say this one more time. No one is questioning the value of being positive, having your own personal belief system, or anything else that you need to govern your daily life. I do believe that there is such a thing as toxic positivity. And the idea that everything has to be approached with a positive attitude, that it's almost to the case where you can't talk about having a bad day. I've overheard conversations where people say, "Oh man, things just aren't going my way today," and they'll get this lecture. Well, you're probably setting yourself up for a bad day. You're in this thing where you're having a bad day, and you're not going to get out of it as long as you believe that. That to me is we hear so much about toxic this and that in today's world, and to me that's toxic. I mean, you are allowed to have a bad day. I hit my finger with the hammer. I'm allowed to say some curse words. I'm allowed to say this job sucks. Okay. That's part of channeling your energy. It's part of letting off steam. Okay. When I hit my finger with a hammer, oh, it's still going to be a good day. I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous. You're allowed to have bad moments. You're allowed to have a bad day. You're allowed to feel down. That's part of the process. Now, you can say overall, you have to have a positive attitude about the things you're doing. That's fine. But it doesn't mean every moment you cannot let your guard down for 1 second. You can't have one ill feeling. You can't be anything that could be construed as negative for 1 second. That's simply, in my view, toxic. We don't need to be constantly uplifted. And it's getting to the point now where people need constant encouragement, constant reinforcement. Okay. And it's just not necessary. When it comes to beliefs, that's a delicate one. And I'm going to get into why that is. Um, Everyone, whether they admit it or not, has a personal belief system. And I would say this incorporates religion, but it's more than that. Because even if you are a quote unquote religious person and there's a certain faith that you subscribe to, there's going to be times when you tailor it. Okay. So what that means is there's roughly what, 7 point billion people on Earth. And I would make the argument that there's 7.5 billion little religions in the world. We all have our way of dealing with life. We all have our way of having a personal way to deal with the challenges of life and the hardships and the sorrows that come with it. We all have to have a way to deal with that. And I, or not anybody else, am here to tell you that the way you do it is wrong. I mean, it's what you feel is important. And I want to stress that as I talk today as a skeptic, it doesn't mean that I don't have my own little beliefs or little hopes about what may be beyond our world. I certainly do. But here again, we're going to talk about a very important distinction between having experiences that, let's say, I couldn't explain or I can't explain. I've certainly had them. But you have to be very careful in terms of recognizing that that's your personal experience, not somebody else's. And we've all heard the cliche that your perception is your reality. We've heard that how many times? If you've been on a college campus, if you have been in a coffee shop conversation, at some point, how do we know? How do we know? All we know is our perception. That is our reality. Yeah. But in a more practical sense, there is a practical, yeah, in a practical sense, there's a way of making your way through that. Okay. Yes, we all have a given reality, but we also can agree that 2 plus 2 equals 4. And if 2 plus 3 equals 5, and 2 plus 4 equals something else because you don't want it to, at that point, our world doesn't function anymore. Okay. If 2 plus 2 didn't equal 4, we wouldn't be able to have things like this. This requires collectively working on objective truths over time. The technology that was developed for other things gets incorporated into new things. It's processed, it's improved. Airplanes. We've developed aerodynamics over the last century, and we have to be able to agree that there are a certain amount of objective truths that make our world work. If we couldn't agree on these things, if we all lived in our own separate reality and went about our business in that way, we wouldn't live in the world that we do. There has to be a way of, in medicine, sharing the information that has been handed down by generations over centuries in terms of how the body works. There has to be a system of collecting objective truths. Okay. And that's where my skepticism is kind of rooted. Okay. If somebody comes to me and says, there was a flying saucer over at my house the other day, I will listen to them and I will believe that that is an experience that they've had. But I also, before I would come on the podcast and tell you about this amazing experience that my neighbor had as a truth, okay, I would have to have some evidence for it. And it's very difficult at times when it comes to our personal beliefs, some things that we have experienced, to separate what is a personal truth from what is an objective truth. And some of the best minds that have ever existed in humankind have struggled with this. Einstein struggled with it. Kepler struggled with it. Newton struggled with it. And if those guys can struggle with the balance of personal and objective truths, then you should cut yourself some slack. We all are going to struggle with them from time to time. And one of the ways that you can kind of test yourself, is this something that I believe in my personal world, or is this an objective truth? One of the first tests that you can give yourself is, do I want this to be true? That's a tough one. My son is innocent. Yeah, you probably want that to be true. I want to believe there's something bigger. There's forces bigger than me at work. Yeah, you probably want that to be true. If we can say that to believe in something, for the purposes of this discussion, believing in something is accepting it to be true in the absence of conclusive evidence. That is what believing is. We are accepting something to be true without conclusive evidence. That's why you need faith, for example, when it comes to matters of spirituality. And if you could design an experiment, let's say in regard to spirituality, any type of spirituality, I don't necessarily mean religious beliefs, but any type of spirituality. If you could design an experiment that had predictable results, repeatable results, and held up against independent testing, that spiritual forces of some kind or another were having an effect on the physical world, your name would be in the pages of history right alongside the biggest ones that ever existed. Galileo, Newton, Einstein, Hawking, all of them. That would be a big one. And I got to tell you, here again, from being a skeptic, from how I view the term, if evidence would present itself, if someone could design an experiment for that, that would lead me down the road of this is something we need to pursue. This would be pretty interesting. Okay. But the fact of the matter is that just hasn't happened yet. That is not saying that it's not true. Okay. There may very well be something to our existence that is far beyond what we can comprehend. And I would certainly hope that. Getting back to some of those experiences that I've had that I can't explain relate to the love of my grandparents. And nothing in the world would make me happier than the feeling that I might somehow meet them again, talk to them again, be with them in another place. Those are very powerful notions. And it's often the 800-pound gorilla in the room, in that our own mortality very much influences what we believe. It's ever since human beings were enough of an intellectual creature that they could gaze into the night sky at the stars and contemplate their own existence, there has been this awareness that our existence at some point is going to end through death. And it's not an easy one to deal with. And the faith, the belief systems around comforting us in those moments, that influence and what pushes us to believe something, that's very powerful, and it can't be ignored. These belief systems, like I said, we believe what we want to believe. We believe what comforts us. And if we go back to that definition that we came up with for believing, in the simple one, just for the sake of this conversation, if we go back to that and say, belief is accepting something to be true without conclusive evidence. When was the last time you knew somebody who believed something, accepted it to be true without evidence, that was unpleasant in their daily life? It doesn't happen very often. We always choose to believe something that makes us feel good, that comforts us, and we can't ignore that influence when we evaluate situations. And, when people ask me about being a skeptic, they'll often say, well, what do you believe in? Like there's some requirement for accepting something to be true without evidence, okay, without conclusive evidence. And if you look at let's talk about American society, what people believe in, any type of spirituality, that can be any type of a religion or any type of spiritual belief that somebody has. That's a new word now. A lot of people won't say they're religious, but they say they're spiritual. Okay. All of those things well into the double digits. I would say the majority of Americans believe in some sort of spirituality. Modern witchcraft is making a comeback. Meaning behind coincidences. This was meant to be. This couldn't have just happened. Astrology, that's been around a long time. And poll after poll suggests that, here again, an enormous amount of Americans say that there is some truth to astrology. Karma as an energy. Now, I'll hear karma referred to a lot of times when people get their just desserts. I don't know that that's because of a spiritual force. If you are an employer or you're a vendor or you're something like that and you're not paying your bills and no one will do business with you anymore, it's not necessarily karma. That's a situation that you created yourself. And if some abstract way you want to say, well, that's karma, that's fine. But the fact of the matter is that when you piss everybody off, nobody's going to do business with you. That's just the way it goes. And ghosts. Oh man, there's a lot of people who have ghost stories. And I got to tell you, I grew up around a lot of people who drank, and there was nothing more entertaining at our family get-togethers than those moments when some of the adults would have a few too many and would start telling their ghost stories. Oh, that's that's as entertaining as entertainment gets. But it's here again, there's no conclusive proof of any of that stuff. And the problem is the reliance on these beliefs, whether they be in regard to an extreme form of positivity, okay, where you need to feel good about yourself all the time, whether it's faith in this something bigger than myself. All of these things on the surface can be very positive things to make you feel good, give you purpose, and so on. But they can also make you very, very vulnerable. The step between somebody making you feel a little bit better by reinforcing your beliefs and manipulating you is often a very small one. And this is where I feel a lot of times that faith, positivity, all of these other things can be bottled and sold, whether it be in the form of books, seminars, strategies, and things. And I want to be clear, donating to a church. I grew up at a time where local parishes in the Catholic community, for the most part, were very poor. And the priests and so on took a vow of poverty. And the money and the donations that they got, they rolled into community service, whether it be for the parish itself or the surrounding community. They did a lot for children in need, maybe who lost a parent. Anytime somebody in the local community would have a death in the family, they brought over food. And whether you're doing it in the name of your religion or not, any organization that operates on that plane, I am absolutely 100% okay with. But on the other hand, if the so-called leader of your church lives in a 50-room mansion and has a collection of Rolls Royces, at that point, I would question your donations. I would question the wisdom of that. And this goes with the positivity too. And here again, I don't mind a positivity being bought and sold, so to speak, when that is what it's being branded as. I do have a problem with it when it's worked into the conversation, oftentimes with people who are vulnerable. They've had a bad experience. They've had a bad divorce. They've lost their business and they're feeling really down about themselves. And at that point, to sell somebody a bill of goods about being positive, I find problematic. And this vulnerability of wanting to believe, of wanting to hear things that reinforces your happiness is one of the reasons why so many people today are gullible in regard to politics, political ideologies, which, in my opinion, are very close to becoming cults. Conspiracy theories. These are things that can be, I don't know how many times a politician has paraded his wife and children out. Look at my family. Look at my family and my beliefs. We believe what you believe, and we believe in values. And anytime you hear that word, beware. You notice when people talk about values, they kind of give that values. They give that different tone, like it's something very powerful. And they talk about their values and their family. And the next thing comes to this new bill that we're trying to work through. This is in line with our values. And it's pandering to the belief system that they know a lot of their constituency has. And they're advised to do it because it's almost a guaranteed sale. They don't have to work through a bunch of cumbersome facts and logic to tell you about what it is that they're trying to push through. Okay, they leave that for the people that are in the middle somewhere. They go for the low-hanging fruit first, and that is to pander to people's beliefs and values. So when you just believe in something, I understand the power of making you feel good, making you feel better, but it also leaves you vulnerable. It leaves you vulnerable to being manipulated, and at worst, it can be even more sinister than that. Um, this idea that there's something better, that's a difficult one because I wanna believe that there's something better after I die. Who doesn't? Who doesn't wanna believe that? And I understand how comforting that phrase can be when there's a death in the family. But at the same time, that phrase can be very dangerous. Um, you know, I did it for God and country is usually a phrase that we consider to be very noble, but it is also the credo of a suicide bomber. And we have to be very careful, in my opinion, talking about something better in regard to this life. I'm very leery of any belief system that stresses that there's something better than this life. I don't like a belief system that devalues life. And I've said that to some of my religious friends, and they dispute the fact that it devalues life. But if I say I'm better than you are, I've devalued you. It's pretty that simple. And when people talk about something better, I had a Christian young lady one time say to me, and I considered this to be very sad. She said, I can't wait for this to be over so I can be there." And talking about life that way, that it's something you have to get out of the way to be in paradise. I find that troublesome. I really find that troublesome. I getting back to the positivity. I ran across a saying the other day. It was on. It was a quote of some kind. It was on social media, and it's something that I don't have the exact words here, but it was something like this: "If you don't believe in miracles, you won't find any." And I understand here again the positive spirit that phrase is meant. I understand that there has to be a dream to chase, that there has to be something that your imagination fuels things that you do in your life. That is the positive mix of that statement. If you don't believe in miracles, you won't find any. That's the positive mix. The negative effect that this has is if you believe, here again, in my opinion, if you believe in too many miracles, you're going to find too many miracles. You're going to find things that, quite frankly, exist only in your personal belief system. And you can't go chasing every miracle, every dream all the time. That's where the toxic positivity that I speak about, that's where I'm coming from when I talk about it. So the best thing that I can say is, like I said, we all get so many trips around this sun. And that's an objective truth. No matter what you believe about the hereafter, no matter what you believe about karma, no matter what you believe about the position of the planets influencing your daily life, no matter what you believe about ghosts, no matter what you believe about any of these things, it is a certainty that we only get so many trips around the sun. And when you consider that the Earth is approximately 4.5 billion years old, that means the Earth has gone around the sun 4.5 billion times. And if we are lucky, If we are lucky, we might get 70, 80, 90, some of us more than that, and a lot of us not even that many trips around the sun. Now, just consider what that means. That means 70 or 80 summers, 70 or 80 Christmases. That's it. So I understand. That's all the more reason why I understand why people want to believe in something bigger than the physical world. But that's also why I don't want it to be devalued. This isn't negative at all. I believe that part of being a skeptic is n- eh, acting on what you know. And we may personally choose to believe something that comforts us about what happens after death or influences our daily life. But we should also be aware that every single person that is around us is here for a very short time. So, my positive attitude, if that's what you're longing for when you're hearing me talk, is we should all help each other share that journey. It saddens me so much knowing that we are here for such a short time to begin with, that we find so many reasons to hate each other. And a lot of times it's over things that we believe in, which, as I said, can't be conclusive at this point in time anyway. So we basically are taking our personal beliefs and using them as reasons to kill each other, to hate each other. It's absolutely insanity. I can't believe that in the year 2021 already, that we choose to divide each other so much over what we believe. And then there's the dividing each other up over what we look like. And then there's the dividing up each other over what part of the world we're from. And it just goes on and on and on. And in the meantime, that ride just keeps going, slipping by. That ride just keeps slipping past us. We're so worried about what somebody else believes. They don't believe like us. And that ride just keeps going by. When we could be using this time for making the journey, making our life experience as valuable and as worthwhile as possible. And what happens afterwards, we can have faith in whatever we want to believe in. That's fine. But let's use our own eventual mortality as living creatures to value each other's life, to value all life. I'm an animal lover. I'm a humanitarian in a lot of ways. Life has value. Emotions have value. And that, to me, if you really want to believe in something, that's something that's so powerful. Love. Love is such a hard thing to explain, but we know it's real. We feel it. We always find reasons to hate each other for no reason. You can hate somebody upon meeting them, it seems like, but why can't you love them? Why can't you love somebody for no reason? Why can't you make do something nice to make their day better? What is so hard about doing that? Why do we have to separate each other over things we believe? It seems very sad to me. So when I talk about being a skeptic, maybe a better word to help illustrate my feeling about this is I'm a realist. And here again, even that gets to be a term. A realist means, well, I'm not going to accept any BS. This is what it is. That's not true. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having a good attitude. Absolutely nothing wrong at all. I talked about that, but that does not mean that we should lose a realistic approach to our problems, that we need to be constantly uplifted to get through the day, that we need to pretend that things are a certain way to deal with our problems. I don't believe that that's a good thing. I know that a lot of people probably misinterpreted some of the things I said today. And I hope not, because I generally believe There's that word again. I generally believe, I can't prove it, but I generally believe that when I talk about beliefs, that I try to be a good person. I try to appreciate the good in others. And I'm very aware that their situation in life is just as difficult as mine is. And we never know what burdens someone else is carrying in this life. We never know what crosses they are carrying in this life. We don't know what they're going to experience after death for sure, but we know that there's almost certainly, to some degree, hardships in their life today, now, existing now. If there isn't, there has been, or there's going to be. And let's give each other the benefit of the doubt as we get through the day. Let's appreciate the fact that we're all in the middle of a very short journey around the sun. And we don't need to create false realities or create hopes around things that we can't prove especially if it's going to take away from our appreciation of this life and things we can do to make somebody else's life better in this life and appreciate the world and life that's on this world for what it is right now. The earth, there hasn't been any deliveries of air. We haven't had any UPS deliveries of air to our world. We haven't had any cosmic UPS or Federal Express deliveries of water to our world. The life support system that's on Earth right now has supported every bit of life that we know, whether it be Napoleon or King Henry VIII or Cleopatra or Tyrannosaurus Rex. They walk under the same sky. They all walked under the same sky. They breathe the same air, the same water. This life support system that is our home called Earth has supported not only us, but every person and everything that has ever existed on this planet as we know it. And we should be taking care of that environment for ourselves and for the life that comes in the future in all of its various forms. Now that's my positive message on a real world scenario. And let's not divide each other over things that we can't prove and so on. Well, anyway, if you do have any comments, feel free to send me a comment. If you're on social media, you can send the Billy D's podcast a comment. You can make a comment in the comment section, or you can send a message. I'm also on Twitter. Twitter is kind of like my social media home, and I've been there for a long time. Twitter is kind of built for podcasting, so I would encourage you to stop by and tweet me. You just have to be nice. There you go. See, you got to be nice. I'm not saying you have to be positive and have to agree with everything I say, but no mean-spiritedness. We don't have room for that. We don't have time for that in this world. I'm Billy Dees. Thank you for checking out my podcast today, and we'll be talking to you again next week.